So, hi, I'm Apollo, and I'm going to be reviewing The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. For start, it's good to think about if you or a loved one have been affected by mental illness, because that is a big plot point in this. The story focuses on a young woman, Esther, in the 50s, and she's very talented, but it talks a lot about her struggle with mental illness and how she quickly declines. So the author is Sylvia Plath. She was a poet married to the famous poet Ted Hughes. They had 2 kids but got divorced, and a few years later she killed herself by putting her head inside an oven. So the author herself clearly had a lot of struggles with mental illness. So one of my favorite parts of this book was how Esther describes her memories and what she sees. An example on page 20 is when she says, "I remember the ceiling over every bathtub I've stretched out in. I remember the texture of the ceilings and the cracks and the colors and the damp spots and the light fixtures. I remember the tubs too, the antique griffin leg tubs and the modern coffin-shaped tubs and the fancy pink marble tubs overlooking indoor lily ponds. And I remember the shapes and sizes of the water taps and the different sorts of soap holders." I really liked the way Sylvia Plath describes different places and how Esther's memories are different. It's interesting when you look at her memories of other things, they seem to be more drab and less interesting. She seems to definitely romanticize bathing and eating. It's 2 of the only things she really enjoys, especially as the book goes on. She's a writer, but still, as the book goes on, starts liking writing less, liking her writing less. When she starts to talk about how her handwriting looks drab, but still she remembers the nice hot baths. Esther as a character is really relatable in the way she thinks. On page 146, in italics, her internal monologue says, "I summon my little chorus of voices. Doesn't your work interest you, Esther? You know, Esther, you've got the perfect setup of a true neurotic. You know you'll never get anywhere like that. You'll never get anywhere like that. You'll never get anywhere like that." And her thinking like that is really relatable, especially to me, who has struggled with mental illness, and it is something that I've dealt with, is thinking repetitive bad things about myself or how I'll never go anywhere. Esther as a character was just really relatable in that sense. Also, the way she describes different places and activities makes you feel like you're there. On page 143, when Esther does her first shock treatments, electroshock therapy treatments, it says, "Don't worry," the nurse grinned down at me. "Their first time, everybody's scared to death." I tried to smile, but my skin had gone stiff like parchment. Dr. Gordon was fitting 2 metal plates on either side of my head. He buckled them into place with a strap that dented my forehead and gave me a wire to bite. I shut my eyes. There was a brief silence like an indrawn breath, then something bent down and took hold of me and shook me like the end of the world. "Wee-ee-ee-ee," it shrilled through an air crackling with blue light, and with each flash a great jolt dubbed me till I thought my bones would break and the sap fly out of me like a split plant. And the way Sylvia Plath describes this experience is really colorful. You get an idea of what Esther sees and feels and what it sounds like, and you get an idea of everything she experiences. You can almost feel yourself in that chair and the nurse's voice and see the blue lights behind your eyes. It's really colorful the way Sylvia Plath writes. I really recommend this book. It was a really interesting read and a lot of fun, especially if you know someone struggling with mental illness. I think it would give you a good insight into what it might be like for them. I had some neurotypical friends, people who don't have mental illness, read this book, and they did mention they felt like they could understand people a little better. And it definitely changed my idea of how I do view some things, especially people and the practices and thoughts in the 50s. It was really interesting to see the view into that, and especially how they treated mental illness then compared to now. I would say don't read it if you're really triggered by any kind of talk of depression or suicide or self-harm, because that is in the book, and best to avoid that. Death & Co. by Sylvia Plath. 2. Of course there are 2. It seems perfectly natural now. The one who never looks up, whose eyes are lidded and bald like Blake's, who exhibits the birthmarks that are his trademark, the scald scar of water, the nude vendigris of the condor. I am red meat, his beak. Claps sideways, I am not yet. He tells me how badly I photograph. He tells me how sweet the babies look in their hospital icebox. A simple frill at the neck, then the flutings of their Lonian death gowns. The 2 little feet. He does not smile or smoke. The other does that. His hair, long and plausive, bastard, masturbating a glitter. He wants to be loved. I do not stir. The frost makes a flower. The dew makes a star. The dead bell. Somebody's done for.